Hi there. Today we, the Loom Bawang, will be presenting to you our community service initiative project. In the module, we were required to focus on a group that were impacted by the current COVID-19 pandemic. The group that will be the center of this presentation will be the immigrant workers of Malaysia. First, we will introduce to you our main objective of our research. The main objective was to study the overall well-being amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Besides that, our study includes the potential policy measures that could be implemented to reduce their suffering. The significance of this study showcases potential ideas that can be implemented in both societal and governmental levels to aid the migrant workers during this tough time.
Migrant workers are individuals who migrate to another country in view of opportunities of being employed as defined by the International Labour Organization. Malaysia is a popular country that hosts an estimated of 4 million migrant workers that consist of both legal and illegal. These migrant workers mainly come to Malaysia from the third world countries of origin such as Indonesia, Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Philippines. Most commonly, migrant workers come to Malaysia as an effort to better their lives and of their families. In most of the third world countries, due to the large population density, there is a lack of job opportunities for them, leading to the high poverty percentage of the country. Malaysia, due to their needs of laborers, have looser immigration laws and encourage the influx of migrant workers. With the higher exchange rate, more job opportunities, and higher standard of living, this attract migrant workers from all over the world to come to Malaysia. However, the sad part of their story is that most of the migrant workers are met with incredibly abusive and deplorable conditions when in Malaysia. In terms of before the COVID-19 pandemic, the migrant workers were already unfairly treated. This includes abuse from employers, inhabitable living conditions, and largely looked down by the overall community.
However, during the COVID-19 pandemic, their situations have only worsened. The Malaysian media most commonly highlights the impacts of the pandemic on Malaysians, but rarely do they show the lives of migrant workers during this unsettling era. There are many negative impacts the migrant workers undergo during this pandemic. The first impact is loss of jobs or daily wages. In Malaysia, a movement control order, MCO, was implemented that initially closed down all the sectors, implementing work from home orders. This has led to many people losing their businesses and jobs. The major community that was hit by this MCO were the migrant workers, as they have lost their daily wages due to the fact that no companies were allowed to conduct on-site work. Furthermore, the lack of funds is another impact. Due to this loss of daily wages, migrant workers lack the proper funds to sustain their day-to-day lives in Malaysia, and this has led them to be dependable on giveaways by the government that may not necessarily be accessible to everyone. Furthermore, the migrant workers are not included in governmental incentives. Besides that, the Malaysian government introduced several incentives for locals to aid them during this pandemic, such as relief funds and grants. However, there were no special incentives provided to the migrant workers, leaving themselves helpless. Lastly, migrant workers are also at higher risk of exposure. This is number one due to the lack of funds. Many of them have ignored preventive and corrective measures. For preventive measures, migrant workers rather not invest their small savings in protection items such as masks and sanitizers, and for corrective actions, migrants would choose not to admit themselves in hospital due to high fees and the possibility of losing work. Their unsanitary and tight living conditions have also become a hub for the virus, as shown in Selangor Mansion and Malayan Mansion incidents.
To find a solution that can help migrant workers during this time, we have conducted surveys and contacted NGO to pave the way for our solutions. In the survey, it was concluded that the overall perception of Malaysians toward the migrant communities are negative. From our discussion and research with NGOs such as the Naga Neta, Migrant Care and International Labour Organizations, ILO, it was concluded that the main reason as to why migrant workers are impacted badly during this pandemic is due to their social disparity with Malaysians. To fix this problem, the solution was generated aimed to better integrate migrant workers into the society to reduce this gap. This is done by analyzing the solutions of other countries and to implement them here. The main solution is to curb migrant worker discrimination through a number of steps. These steps are done to strengthen the relationship between migrant workers and Malaysians.
The first step is cultural assimilation. In Singapore, the Housing and Department Board (HPD) created a public housing policy that integrates the multi-ethnic population to share the same living space. This policy allows for an integration of the immigrant in our society. The Department of Education in Singapore have been ordered to implement multiracial schools. The children of immigrant workers can be assimilated into the community at a young age. It will teach the children to grow up being more open and accepting towards the other races. The next step is changes in policy. The first policy is the settlement policy from Canada. This policy allows the immigrant to obtain a permanent residence and increase their possibility for getting the higher paying jobs. The next policy is the multiculturalism policy. This policy is aimed to promote the multiculturalism between the immigrant workers and the locals. One of the methods in this policy is by helping the immigrant workers in their English to remove the language barrier. The last step is education and workforce training. In Canada, they provide education and workforce training for migrant workers to improve their skill in terms of technical, intellectual, and language for higher employability chances.
Based on these examples from other countries, the solution we found are steps that can be implemented by the actions of NGOs and the Malaysian government to bridge the gap between migrant workers and locals. First, for the role of NGOs. NGOs can conduct large-scale education courses for migrant workers that allows them to learn and develop their language skill. This will allow them to communicate more effectively with the locals, strengthening the social bonds. Besides that, the NGOs can also promote skills and development plans for the migrant workers to mold them as contributing assets to the country. Some of the basic skills are creating arts and craft, culinary skills, hospitality-related skills, and vocational training. This can change the perception of locals and migrant workers only work in the 3D job scope. NGOs can also alter the perspective of locals by conducting awareness campaigns to highlight the importance and contributions of migrant workers in the development of Malaysia. This can be done by creating hypes on social media to gain the attention of mainly the younger generation. By doing so, the overall negative views of migrant workers can instead be replaced with respect and empathy. Next is the role of the government. The government should abide by the Ethical Trading Initiative policy brief provided by the International Labour Organization. This is done to protect the interests of the migrant workers. This policy includes access to healthcare, given sufficient paid sick leave, provide safe and acceptable working conditions, given comprehensible education on their rights, and ensures their wages are paid. Besides that, the government can also set up a fund to provide support for the struggling migrant families. The government should also enforce stricter rules that imposes the responsibilities of migrant workers on their employers. This can prevent them from mistreating them due to the fear of the law. By implementing the following solutions in Malaysia, the migrant workers can be protected and integrated into the society easily. By doing so, the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic can definitely be reduced. Thank you for listening to our presentation.